Honoring the Journey is made possible by Choircast from Choir Publishing. Choir exists to amplify voices that might otherwise go unheard, voices like mine that invite us to rethink, reimagine, and rediscover faith and spirituality. Many voices, one message, Choir. Explore more at choir.com. That's QUOIR.com. Well, hello, friends. Welcome back to Honoring the Journey. I'm Leslie Neese, your host. And friends, I cannot wait to introduce you to today's guest. Now, you've probably seen her. You probably follow her online, I would assume. If you're going through deconstruction, she probably popped up in your feed. Maybe you didn't realize this is who it was, but her name is Brit Hartley. And she is literally probably one of my favorite people online talking about deconstruction, spirituality, atheism, which I've learned a lot about atheism with you, Britt, because she is an atheist spiritual director. And if you are just coming out of religion, that probably sounds really weird. You're like, wait, you can be spiritual and be an atheist? Yes, you can. We're going to talk about this today. Brit Hartley, welcome to Honoring the Journey. I'm so glad you're here today.
So happy to be here. I've been looking forward to this conversation and love the work that you do here in this space.
Oh, thank you so much. Yeah, actually, I got to speak with her one-on-one. She is a facilitator. I'm taking a non-religious spiritual director training through Jim Palmer's Center for Non-Religious Spirituality, and he brought her on. It's funny because I don't know if you know this, Britt. I had signed up to do it last year, but then it was like the podcast and the book and everything was happening all at once, and I was like, I cannot give 100% to this, and I didn't like that feeling. So I was like, Jim, can I sort of postpone until the next one? And then it was like bonus. I postponed and then it was like, now you're here. And I get
meant to be.
It is. It's so exciting. But I love Jim. He's been on the podcast a couple of times. And just the work that you guys do is so important. And the thing I love about it is it's bringing people together. And instead of, tearing them apart, which I feel like sometimes people think deconstruction and questioning and, all of it is all about tearing apart, but it's really not. It's about finding common ground. So I can't wait to hear more about your journey, Britt. So I guess that brings me to my first question. Why don't you just kind of take us back? What was it like growing up? I think you grew up in Mormonism, right?
I did. I grew up in Mormonism, and my childhood was I didn't have any big traumas or anything like that. It was really a lovely childhood with a religious community. And I would say that I had a lot of questions at a young age, but I just kind of assumed that adults had figured that out, and eventually I would too. So my childhood was just really lovely growing up in a Mormon family and a Mormon community. I really have no complaints about it. By the time I became a teenager, some of those questions really started to, I started to question the answers that I was getting from adults. And the big break for me is in Mormonism. You really are taught that the prophet speaks for God. The current prophet speaks for God. And so there was this new pamphlet that came out just for teens, and it was marketed as God's direction to teenagers in this day and age, just for you. And I was like, fantastic. The creator of the universe is going to talk to me. This is fantastic. Yes. So it's really I took this seriously. I really did take it seriously. I took my beliefs very seriously. And then when you get the pamphlet, it's like, don't swear, don't drink coffee, don't get tattoos, a lot of like do's and don'ts. And it just felt really petty to me, just like really undersold. Like the creator of the universe just like really cares like that I drink Red Bull instead of a coffee. Like that seems just like, and Mormons, we won't do coffee or tea, but we'll get like super into sugar and swig and things like that. And so it just, as a teenager, that presented for me as cognitive dissonance, that like, this is not what a creator of the universe should be caring about. Like what word I say when I stub my toe, that's absurd. So started to have some cognitive dissonance. Now, I wish I could have at the time gone to my parents and said, I'm questioning and experiencing cognitive dissonance in my body. But I didn't have the tools for that. I didn't have the language for that. So it just kind of came out in just like punk rock and F you and kind of this attitude.
Rebellion.
And that rebellion culminated in me me having sex with my boyfriend at the time, and I was 15, which then got me kicked out of my home. And so that was a really big break in my
At
life. That was
15? Where did you
Mhm.
go?
And so
Do
I
you mind?
went to my uncle's house, who was a Mormon bishop, and it was kind of this idea that you can't come here, but you can go to your uncle's house. He's a bishop and maybe he'll straighten you out. And I really had nowhere else to go. And like, this is before phones where I could have maybe figured something out for myself. So I just went to my uncle's house. Um, and to his credit, he's a lovely man, and he had a gospel library, like books. And I had this thought. I didn't realize at the time like how big of a thought it was and how kind of egocentric maybe it was, but I'm 16 years old, throw me a bone here. And I kind of had this thought, okay, my life currently sucks. Like this really, really is hard. If I could just figure out the truth, then I'll be able to pattern my life accordingly, and then shit won't happen to me like this. And so I just kind of figured out, you know what? I'm just going to figure out this God thing. I'll
Okay.
figure it out. Nobody
Yeah.
else has. I'm 16. I'll
Yeah.
figure it out.
Well,
Right.
I mean, teenagers of all people think they have it all figured out, so that
Right,
makes sense.
right. So I thought, I'm gonna figure this thing out. So at that time, I would say I became like a nuanced Mormon, nuanced Christian, where I kind of saw the church as maybe one of the ways that God was working with his children. And so I kind of had this kind of interfaith, what we would call now like a nuanced Mormon or a nuanced Christian. And that held for me for a while. It was a way for me to reconcile with my family. I ended up going to BYU Idaho, a Mormon college, and for a while I could kind of hold that nuanced space. And then I went to I well, let me back up here. Then I had my first child, and I had kind of a bigger faith crisis where I started to really look at polygamy was really the thing for me. And that's when I completely lost my Mormon faith, and became at that time like a tradition, more of a just like a traditional Christian, like, oh, I just have the
Right.
wrong religion. And that's when I went to Christian theology school to further study these issues. And it wasn't because I was an atheist trying to disprove God. I was just trying to figure things out. I was trying to get closer to God.
Right.
And in that process, studied under Thomas J. Ord in my doctorate program, who you have had on the podcast, who we were talking off air, is just one of the most lovely humans I've ever met, and had this
Truly.
beautiful conception of God, this open and relational theology, and that kept me faithful for a while. But in the end, that deconstruction train kept going for me until I lost my faith in God entirely, and that was it was very devastating for me. It wasn't For some people, it's very freeing. For some people, it feels like they can breathe and the shackles are off. For me, it was devastating, absolutely devastating.
How did you deal with that when you first realized, "I think it's gone"?
Yeah, I really just collapsed, and people will describe it as like the floor dropping out underneath you,
Mhm.
not being able to make a decision. Some people call that the void or nihilism. It's where like you just lose all of your anchors. So like I had no sense of morality. Like, what is morality if there's no God? I had no sense of like, oh, there's no ultimate truth, there's no ultimate justice. Maybe there's no afterlife. I'm just here on this planet as a human. I have no way to distinguish up from down. I have no beliefs. I've lost, like, my marriage is failing because we set up as this Mormon couple. I have a kid by this point. And it was just incredibly disorienting, and my brain just really shut down, and I had very severe depression and even suicidal ideation for me. So it was very
Oh,
difficult for me to lose, because for me it wasn't just losing a religion. You lose your identity, you lose your community, you lose truth, and you lose justice, and you lose morality. Now eventually I was able to rebuild these things, but at the
mhm.
time I really did feel like I had lost everything, and it was very depressing for me.
Well, I think when you're, especially from an early age, brought up in a pretty high control religion that sort of, I guess, everything is connected to God,
Yes.
morality and all the things
Yes.
you just mentioned, they all sort of stem from God. So
Mhm.
if God is out of the equation, it's like, oof.
And yeah, I had no foundation outside of that. And you're right, that is more common with high demand religions.
Mhm.
People will be like, "Why do ex-Mormons make ex-Mormonism their whole personality?" And it's because Mormonism was my whole personality. Do you know what I
Exactly.
mean? Like
Yeah.
like if everything was connected to Mormonism, then it's going to be a pretty big existential crisis when that God dies. And that it was
Right.
that way for me. And that is common for people who leave high demand religions like Mormonism.
Wow. Now, would you say that your belief in God is like it just the God um of Mormonism is now gone? Because the when I look at my faith, I don't know. I just I see God differently. Do you know
Hmm.
what I mean? Like instead
Hmm.
of like this old man up in heaven, like waiting to slap us on the wrist or send us to hell if we believe wrong, I look at God as sort of the thing that connects us all. The consciousness that we all share, the oneness that Jesus talked about. I look at God as sort of the soil we're planted in or whatever. It's different. I would say I'm an atheist to the God I was taught about, but I would
Hmm.
say I still kind of believe in something.
Hmm.
Are you at that point, or are you just like it's like no? Just
Yeah,
curious.
so I like you, like I feel more strongly atheist against the God that I was raised in. I feel like I can't know for sure, but I feel like
Right.
after years of Mormon studies, I can more or less prove that this Mormon God is not what Mormonism claimed it to, or Mormonism isn't
Yeah.
what it claimed to be. And I feel fairly sure in that. As far as like the not capital G God, but little G God, like not the God of the Old Testament.
Right.
um what a lot of people don't realize about the term atheist, and this is more going into the philosophical roots of these words, is
Mhm.
in philosophy there's a big difference between making a positive claim and making a negation. And so atheism is not a positive claim, meaning atheism makes no claims about what reality is. All it says is, I am not convinced of the theistic God. And the
Mm.
God of theism is a personal God, the kind of God that answers prayers and cares what kind of clothes you wear and what to eat and what day you worship and things like that. So for me, I don't subscribe to any particular ism as far as saying this is what reality is.
Mhm.
For me, it ended up in a place of intellectual humility, where I'm not an atheist because I've looked in every corner of the universe and I know that there's no God. That's not at all what I'm saying. What I'm saying is I've looked at the history of God and creation of gods, and I'm just skeptical that we're good at this game of what
Mm.
God is and what God is thinking and what God thinks about
So
this
true.
particular political issue. I see a lot of that. I see the majority of that as a human project. Now, if
Mhm.
you ask me, like, how did life begin? Why is there something rather than nothing? What is the universe? My honest answer to that is I don't know. I really don't know.
I
But
don't
for
think
me,
anybody does.
I don't think yeah, I'm like
Yeah.
militantly agnostic in the sense that, like, I don't know, but I don't think you do either, right? And
Exactly.
the analogy that I use is I don't know how many blades of grass are on the earth. Maybe there's an actual number in this moment of what that is, but I think I can know that the answer is not two. And so my
Yeah.
atheism is like, I don't think it's two, but I don't know what it is.
Mhm.
And that for me, and some people, will call that agnosticism, but in philosophy, that would be answering a different question. Agnosticism answers the question of how much knowledge do we have to even answer this question.
Mm.
So for me, yeah, atheism just means I'm skeptical and I am not convinced of the God of theism, but I don't make any grand claims about what reality is. I really just don't think that we know. So for me, spirituality is, how can we build everything that is good about religion and spirituality in light of not knowing, is
Mm.
really the path that calls me.
That's beautiful. I think especially coming out of a very high control religious system myself, not Mormonism, but evangelicalism, I feel like the picture I get as an atheist, for an atheist is like, they wear black and they're gothy and they worship Satan. It's so ridiculous. I mean,
Hmm.
there's so much fear baked into so much of what you're taught in a religion, so that when I hear that word, it took me years to
Hmm.
not be afraid of it. I'm
Yeah.
not afraid of it anymore. Now I would say I am an atheist when it comes to
Yeah.
believing in the God. And I think what I love what you said, Britt, and this is so important to hear. You said, for me.
Hmm.
And I don't know if people realize how important it is that you find your faith for you,
Hmm.
not for what people are expecting. You're like, this is how I see it. And you're not saying you need to see it this way. And you're not saying you need to see it this way. But you're saying if you're in a place where you're questioning, you're okay, you know?
Yeah, and also to that, that's where, You're right that Christianity has defined atheism as like faith in science or
Mhm.
prideful knowing that there is no God, but they kind of set that up as a straw man. They've defined it that way so it's easier to attack.
Right.
When really atheism for me is just I'm not convinced and I'm open to then whatever is, and so it's a very open-minded place rather than a closed-minded place. And for me, in light of not knowing, I also can't know if atheism is a path for everyone. I don't
Mhm.
think all personality types thrive in that level of chaos. And so for me, I'm really focused on how can we make secularism better for the people who find themselves outside of religion, and also how can we continue to check religion so that religion can be in its healthiest form for the people who
Mm.
feel called to those paths. And if well-being is the goal, then there's work to do on both sides. And that feels a lot more whole for me. And like you said at the beginning, where a lot of this Christian versus atheism starts to be really divisive, where it starts to break up families. When really, I want Mormonism to get better for the people who are in it, for my family members who are still in it, and I'll still critique it for that goal. And I want secularism to get better because it has not created the kind of communities or moral education for children or rites of passage that religions have done yet. And so it has work to do too. And so
Mm.
when we talk about then spiritual well-being with there being many paths, that feels a lot more uniting to me than kind of like just the Christian versus atheist, where the Christian's trying to save me from hell and I'm trying to save them from their ignorance, and we're both really prideful at it, and
Ugh,
nobody's listening to each other,
ever.
nobody
Yeah.
changes their mind. That just seems like a goal that just doesn't help anyone.
Well, Britt, that's the whole point of my podcast is to get
Mhm.
people to listen,
Mhm.
just hear different perspectives because I think once we start to understand how many different perspectives there, I was blown away when I went on Survivor, and all of a sudden, I saw all these different belief systems and ways of life, and yet the people were so lovely. And I was
Mm.
like, I didn't realize you could see the world different than me and actually,
Mm.
be a lovely person and to be able to
Yeah.
love deeply. And
'Cause we're
I,
told in religion
yeah,
that, like, everybody else's love or spiritual experiences are counterfeit or they're less
yes,
than in some way, right?
and they're
Like, they
deceived.
have yeah, like, in Mormonism, yeah, it's like they have spirituality, but it's not the fullness. Or,
Right.
like, gay people have love, but it's counterfeit love, right?
Yeah.
Like, it's like they're less human almost in some
Mhm.
way. And when you really talk to humans, like, that is something that does change people's mind, is podcasts like this where you actually get
Mhm.
to hear, "Oh, they seem to be human just like me." And that can be, yeah, that could be a
It's so
big idea at
encouraging.
first. Yeah, that like,
Yeah.
"Wow, you seem to be a human just like me." And that is something that, early on in deconstruction, it can feel very lonely. You can feel very, separated from people, especially when you leave your religious community. But I find that a good sign in your deconstruction is when you get to a point where you're dropping down to that deeper human level
Mhm.
and you find yourself connecting to humans, like underneath even the craziest belief that you've ever heard, or
Yeah.
even something offensive that people say. Underneath that is a human who's experiencing human emotions that you can
Mhm.
understand, and that has made me feel more connected to humanity post deconstruction rather than
Mm.
less.
Well, it's interesting to me because I think moving to Utah from, the
Mm,
Bible Belt, evangelical belt, and I was in ministry and all of that. I had started to deconstruct when we moved here about 7 years ago. And I just remember when I moved here, I hadn't fully left. I mean, I think I
mm,
had stopped going to church, but like I didn't really talk about it with anybody because I was scared.
mhm, mhm.
Um, but when I moved here, everybody was like, "Oh, you're going to save the Mormons. You're going to go and you're going to show them the truth." And then I come here and I meet these lovely humans
Yeah.
who love Jesus just as much as I did, if not more.
Mm,
I mean, they
mhm,
were way more dedicated than most of the people I knew. And I
mm,
was like, it when you actually look somebody in the eye, Britt, and you start to realize this is where they were raised.
mm.
They never had a choice in this. This was
Yeah.
their upbringing. This is their culture. This is their community. This is their safety net.
And they're doing the best they can with that
Absolutely.
reality,
And
as
when
we
I
all are.
realized, well,
Yeah,
and that's the thing. I was like, oh, because I thought, I mean, I'm going to be honest, as a evangelical Christian, anybody but us was in a cult,
yeah,
So
yeah.
I was like, oh, they're in a cult. And then when I started to think, I was like, holy crap, maybe I'm in a cult because I look a
Mm,
lot like they do. And,
mm,
having that sort of in my face after having experienced Survivor, after meeting people from different walks of life who were just lovely,
mm.
it started to really peel the onion back. It was like one layer at a
Yeah.
time.
Isn't it funny though that 20 years ago, if we would be podcasting, I would try to convert you to the true restored version
Yes,
of Christianity, and you would have been trying to get me out of
100.
a cult, and this would be a very different conversation. And both of us at the end of that would feel more sure about our own position.
Oh, yeah.
You know what
Oh,
I mean?
because we
Rather
wouldn't
than this
listen.
exchange where we're trying to, connect to each other,
Yeah.
we would come away feeling more sure that we were right. And
Uh,
so we have to remember that we were there.
Oh, I totally do. And,
Yeah.
that brings me to something I wanted to talk about with you
Mm.
because, when people leave religion, relationships can be really, really hard, especially if you've got family who are still, very much into that space or, friends, your kids, if they're still in, whatever. I listened to something that Brit has a lot of, she does this no nonsense spirituality. And she has a podcast, but she also does these YouTube videos. And really talks about specific things that you kind of face when you're starting to question your beliefs. One of the things you talked about was relationships with people. And I want you to know I listened to it probably 3 times and I sobbed because I thought to
Mm.
myself, this is so amazing to me that somebody who is an atheist helped me to see where I was going wrong in trying to connect with my family who still believes a certain way and looks at me as deceived and, like, oh, I have a demon or whatever. It's frustrating and I stay in that frustration, but listening to what you said, and I would like for you, if you don't mind, to kind of touch on this because I don't think I'm alone in this, Britt. I think there's a
Mm.
lot of people
Yeah.
struggling.
Yeah, and the new struggle really is that it's not just religions anymore, because now religion is really in bed with politics, which means that your religious beliefs affect your politics, which affect how you vote and show up in the world, which can actually directly affect you in a negative way. So it's less, I feel like compared to 20 years ago, these discussions about religion and different religions, is differently flavored now because of the political environment. And we know in America, this is a side tangent, but I'll get back to your question. We know in America that uh, people's political beliefs will kind of drive their religion rather than their religion driving their politics. And there was a very interesting study that showed that more people would rather, adults with children, would rather their children marry kind of outside their religion than the other side of the aisle, right?
Wow.
Like, you would rather them be a different religion than be on the other side of the aisle as far as, like, welcoming a new member of the
Why
family.
is that, do you think?
That's yeah, that's a long story that really goes back to Jerry Falwell in the
Mm,
1980s, and it's kind of this, you know, like the 60s happen. So there's this countercultural movement, which then makes Christianity feel really threatened by secularism. So it starts to combine with the Christian right. And then now they essentially in America are one and the same, especially through the 80s and 90s that started to grow that connection until now. Like, if you say something like, I really believe the Bible is the true word of God, you can kind of guess how they would vote. And
right.
it didn't really fully used to be that way. With the
There's so many.
caveat of
Yeah.
Black Christians who
Yeah.
voted against Trump. But
Right.
white evangelical Christianity is really kind of one and the same now with politics. And that makes it different because now we're ramping up your emotional charge in these situations because you voted in a way that maybe actually directly took my SNAP benefits or affect my gay child or whatever it is, and
Yeah.
that can be really difficult. But essentially what I found with these kinds of relationships is there's this dynamic that happens, and I see it all the time, where the person who has deconstructed really just wants to be seen and validated. Like, just I didn't mean for this to happen. I'm not a bad person. I did all the right things. I just had some questions. I'm struggling. I want you to see me. I'm still a good person. I don't have a demon, right? Like, you feel that, right?
Yes.
And
It's sad.
I call that almost like the black hole need of validation
Mhm.
because you haven't built your new life and community yet. You want the people that love you to show up in this dark night of the soul that you're having. And so that person's like a black hole need of validation. Now, the person who's still in subconsciously senses that there's something about you, something that you know, something that you're dealing with that threatens their ego, their identity, their belonging, their community, their sense of right and wrong, their
Mhm.
sense of meaning and purpose. It really threatens everything about them. And so an ego's only response, a brain's only response in that situation is to play defense.
Mhm.
Is just to like, you have a demon. I'm not going to validate this. I can't go here with you. And both people actually come away very hurt, very
Mhm.
unheard, right? Because the Christian's trying to help you, but
Mhm.
they have this really big wall because you're very scary. And then the deconstruction person is like, I thought you loved me, like why can't you go to this place with me? Like Jesus
Yeah.
said to mourn with those that mourn. I am struggling, and we've been friends for 20 years, we've served in church together. You can't sit with me while I have this question, right? And both people come away, even if they genuinely love each other, which they usually do, both people come away very hurt and disconnected.
Mhm.
Now, the hard thing is that the person, when we're talking about bridge building, how do you build a bridge with this kind of
Mhm.
relationship? Is the person who is still in and hasn't deconstructed, they can't build a bridge to a place that they haven't gone yet. It's the deconstructed person's job. Now, like that's hard to hear
It
sometimes,
is
but how
so
can you
hard.
build a bridge to somewhere that developmentally you haven't been? Like you can't build a bridge to a place you haven't been, which means it's the deconstructed person. If you want a relationship, you're going to be the one to offer some bridge building. And we can do that through using common language. We can do that through really trying to see and connect to the person underneath. We can do that by putting boundaries around, this person is not the person who needs to hear this part of me or this part of my story. And
Right.
we put boundaries around that, and we find other ways to connect. But it's really the deconstructed person's job to build a bridge there. And I find the best way to do that is by trying to develop common language that calms down their ego response so that they
Mm.
see your humanity. And this is high road stuff that may not be appropriate when you're in the anger phase, because you
Mhm.
just need to be angry for a while and you need to maybe just pull back from this relationship. But in time, when you feel like you're ready to, I do feel like with a Christian, I may say something like, you know what, I had a lot of, this brain that God gave me. I had a lot of questions and I had a lot of concerns. I could never really make peace with the problem of evil. But I really love how I was raised on the stories of Jesus. I love the Good Samaritan story. And in that story, the Good Samaritan did not have correct beliefs, but lived a life of morality anyway, even when the priest and Levite walked by. And so my job now is really to mourn with those that mourn and help people regain spirituality even when they've lost their faith, because it's really hard. And I feel like
Mhm.
Jesus would sit in those trenches. He cared a lot more about character than correct belief. And that's how I
True.
follow Jesus now. Now,
Mhm.
just by saying that, rather than coming in and saying like Joseph Smith is a pedophile and I'm an atheist and fuck religion, right? Like like
You
you
know, the
like
stuff you wanna say.
the stuff you want to say, like you can say that at the Thanksgiving dinner. It's not going to go well if you actually want these relationships. But everything that I just said in that is not a lie. Like that is
Right.
true. I still am very inspired by the Good Samaritan story. If you spoke Spanish and I spoke English, but I knew some Spanish and you only spoke Spanish, I would speak to you in the language that I could connect to you on. And
Mm.
so if that language is Christianity, I'm going to find ways to use common language to calm down your ego response so that I'm not trying to attack your identity or anything that is sacred to you. Like I'm not trying to attack your sacredness. I just, for me, lost my faith when I was in theology school, and I'm doing the best I can with that to be able to help people on their spiritual path, even people who have lost their faith or been hurt by religion. And that's how
Mm.
I follow Jesus now. And by saying that, it just like
Yeah.
lowers the temperature and it allows for that human to human connection because their ego isn't so scared of me. And it is hard.
Interesting.
It is hard.
So
You have
hard.
to be in a better it's high road stuff, but it allows me to be able to be with my Mormon family here in Boise, Idaho. All of my friends and family around me are Mormon, and I have children. I want them to have time with their cousins. I want to do things around Christmas time. I don't want my kids to miss that just because I lost my faith. And so these relationships were important to me, and getting to that human and to human level, for one, it helps me to see them as human, that they have different core values than me and different experiences in religion than me. And
Mm.
it also helps them to see that I'm still human too. And then maybe we can just coexist a little bit easier, rather than them trying to convert me, which I have to put boundaries on, or me trying to pull them out of their religion that
Right.
that may not even be that I may not even be good for them, and would destroy our relationships and would destroy my kids' relationships with their kids. And that just ended up being not a path that I wanted to go down.
Yeah, I don't blame you. And it's interesting because I work with people as a coach, who are leaving religion, and a lot of times like they turn into an evangelist for unbelief.
Yes,
And I'm
yes,
like, that's all they know is how
yes,
to share the good news. Oh, the good news is you can be free of
yeah,
religion. Okay,
yeah,
calm down.
yeah.
Let's think about
It's our brain wiring. We take
it's
that
how
with
we
us.
we
Yeah, we
think
take that
everybody
with
needs
us.
to see the world the way we do. And I think
Mhm,
that the whole point of deconstruction for me is to come to a place of peace with the fact that they won't see it
mhm,
the way I do. And that
mhm.
how I see it right now may not be how I see it in a year. The way I said I'm an atheist to the God I was brought up in, it wasn't like that 2 years ago.
Mm,
I still believed in it. It was a very slow process of letting
mhm,
go of dogma and
mm.
and just being able to kind of walk in the freedom of I am loved and accepted right where I am. I don't need to prove anything. I don't need to do anything.
Yeah.
Nobody needs to believe like me. I'm not taking anybody with me.
Mhm.
It's
And
the
that takes
freedom.
time.
It
I've never seen
does.
anyone do that, like
No.
day 1, they lost their faith, day 2, they're doing that with their family. Like, it just like, give yourself, if you're not there, like, the reason I can speak these nice words to this
Mhm.
is because, like, I learned over the past 15 years how to
Right.
have better relationships with my family, but right when I was out of it, I was sending articles to my family,
Oh,
"Read
yeah.
about this," like, "Read about that," like, "Don't you have a question on this?" I was super annoying. And I did kind of feel like I wanted to, burn it all down. Like, burn it all down. What good
Mhm.
is any of this? And what changed my mind is I had a friend of mine who was deconstructing too quickly, and church was really a third parent for him, like a pretty big psychological anchor. And as he was deconstructing, he had a suicide attempt, and
Oh,
it
gosh.
forced me to get off my high horse of evangelizing for atheism as much as I was evangelizing for religion, to realize that, like, I am not the arbiter of what is best
Mhm.
for anyone else's path, and I can maybe show tools or resources or things that have helped me on a path where we let go of truth claims and what is spirituality outside of truth claims. And I can share that with others, but it is not my job to pull people who have
Mm.
different experiences and different core values and different spiritual experiences, different experiences in church. It is not my job to
Mhm.
save them when I was in religion or save them outside of religion. Now, that doesn't mean I just let religion be. I'm still going to critique the ideas that cause harm in this world,
Right,
but there's a
right.
huge difference between critiquing ideas that cause harm, and being hard on ideas and soft on people. I'm very
Mhm.
hard on ideas. I will
Right.
push back on religion, on the bullshit that it does, and the doctrines that genuinely reduce human thriving. And I probably always will. Maybe not, but I think I will. I think the lie of atheism is that if you just there's a couple lies, but one of the lies is, like, if you just walk out of religion, you'll just stumble upon your best life. And the other lie I think of that atheists will say is just like, religion is all bad, it's all bullshit, it's all brainwashing. Religion is a cognitive technology. Even as an atheist, I have to recognize that religion created so many shortcuts that were helpful for humans.
Mhm.
Uh, Access to rituals and community and moral education and awe and states of transcendence and wisdom. and mentorship. And there's so many things that, like, if I just walk into a Mormon ward, all of those things that humans need and meaning and purpose, it just comes to you on the platter.
Mhm.
And there are some things that made my anxiety worse when I was in Mormonism, but there are some things that soothed my anxiety, like this
Mhm.
idea that everything's going to be okay, or having some kind of liturgical calendar that gives you a rhythm in life, going to a church building with friends and family. One of the reasons that I can be so vocal, and maybe I don't know if this is true for you too, but in Mormonism, by the time we're 5 years old, we practice standing at pulpits and kind of
Mm.
saying our truth and teaching having little lessons that
Yeah.
you teach.
Yeah.
And so by the time you're an adult in Mormonism, you're very, like, the fact that I'm on a microphone here feels very natural to me. I was trained how to do that in Mormonism, right? And so I do think it's healthier, rather than just it's a brainwashing cult or whatever, to say this is a cognitive technology that we developed to help humans with our existential fears and with our
Mhm.
needs and with our communal needs. And there was aspects in here that are worth holding on to or shifting in a way
Mhm.
that's more authentic, rather than just try to throw all of that away. And also that would throw away the little girl in me who was just trying to be the best Mormon I could. She
Yeah.
doesn't deserve to be thrown away. She was doing the best she could.
That's right. That's right. That's beautiful. Now, I have heard you speak on Mormon Stories podcast about what started your deconstruction as far as you had adopted a child with brown skin. Do
Mm,
you want to talk a little bit about like what happened and what made you decide to
yeah.
kind of start really going
Yeah,
deep?
so my big break with God and religion, it was kind of two things that happened. The first thing was in theology school, I got really good at the concept of understanding how a society worked, and then guessing what kind of God they would create, and I would be right. So I can even do this now. Like, tell me about their agriculture, tell me, like, how often they flood, tell me about their social hierarchies, tell me how many
Mm,
people, tell me about their livelihood, and give me a society, and I'll tell you, oh, they would, it's quite abundant. This looks like it would be kind of a god of animism, or there's a lot of irregular flooding and a lot of uncertainty. That's going to be a god that requires a lot of more rituals, because that helps you calm down your nervous system. And then you start to even read the Bible as like something will change in the society, because in the Bible they go from nomadic tribes and polytheism to monotheism. And you can start to see there'll be a change in the society, and then their doctrine will change or their belief in God will change. And you can watch that happen over time. No religion has stayed the same, certainly not Christianity. And so that I was wrestling with that, because the God project just started to get more and more human in that process. But then I was still attending church, because I just still felt like this is good for my family. I don't really know how to, like, raise a family outside of this. I've always gone to church every Sunday. This feels really natural for me. And so I was still attending, even though that God was like coming apart for me. And then my last day in church, and I remember the day, and I had David Hayward, who's the naked pastor. If you're deconstructing, you've seen his cartoons. I actually had him draw this for me. But I was holding my daughter, who I adopted, and she's Islander and she has brown skin. And in the Book of Mormon, it talks about how dark skin was a curse from God. And it's the roots of a lot of our Mormon racism. Black people weren't able to enter the temple until 1978. They weren't allowed to have the priesthood.
wow.
And so there's a ton of apologetics around that, about, oh, this is symbolic, or there's lots of backtracking from our previous racism. And while it was just me and my husband and my oldest son, who was white and doing quite well in Mormonism, he was not suffering in any way in it. But I was holding my daughter, and she has brown skin. I realized that all those apologetics around how, yes, we have sexism, but women are great. Yes, we were racist, but God
Now
had
we're
his
not.
timing, and now we're not. It wasn't good enough for her. And I wish I had the character that it would have bothered me more when it
Mm,
didn't personally affect me. But I
mm,
have to be honest and vulnerable. that it didn't fully hit me until it personally affected me.
Yeah.
And I was looking at my daughter and I said, I don't want her to hear all the sexist and racist stuff in this church. I don't want her to internalize that. All the apologetics around it when she's 5, when she's a baby and she doesn't understand the apologetics, all she knows is that there's a lot of white people, and there's a lot of white people in leadership, and there's lots of statements like that, we have statements from prophets that say things like, as brown and black people stay in Mormonism, they'll become lighter and they'll have white and delightsome skin. And yes, we have apologetics that deals with that, but it's not good enough for her. Now that I'm holding her and she's in my
Yeah.
arms and it's my child, it's not fucking good enough. And I
Oh,
walked
Britt,
out of
I
that
get that.
building and I didn't go back. And so it was twofold.
Brit.
Like my personal faith was failing, but I still had enough community to keep
Yeah.
going and mental gymnastics to make it work. And then when it came to my daughter, it wasn't good enough. And I left
Brit.
and it was scary. It was a step into the unknown that I
Oh,
was doing because maybe I wouldn't have done it for myself, but I would do it for my kid. And that was the last straw for me.
a lot of people end up leaving high control religious systems because of their children. And
Mm,
I would say a majority of people who deconstruct, it's because they love somebody who is gay
okay. Yeah.
and they've been told that they're going to hell, and yet they see them loving God just as much
Yeah.
as
Just a
them. And it's
beautiful
like,
child.
it was one of my first thing. Now, I didn't have a child who was gay, but I had a child from Survivor, quote unquote.
Mm,
He called me mama. I loved him. He was gay, Mormon. He was a gay Mormon flight attendant. And so, like, knowing him and loving him, all of a sudden I felt very maternal. And it
mm.
was when I started really questioning, and it was one of the first things. So you'll hear this so often. And what you said, you're like, I'm so ashamed that I didn't see this until it affected me personally. I felt the same. I
Yeah.
was like, how did I not see this? But
Yeah.
until it affects you personally, it is just a concept. It
Yeah,
is
and
just
your
a
brain
belief.
is very clever in, like,
Yes,
the mental gymnastics that it can do to
100%.
contextualize it in order for you to stay in.
Hmm.
And me doing some apologetics, like, I had really complex mental gymnastic systems to make it work, and it all just fell apart when I looked at my child.
Yeah. Man, the thing that I think made me feel like I was free falling, I think we've all been through this if we've been through any amount of deconstruction, was when I realized that the Bible wasn't inerrant and it wasn't,
Mm,
you couldn't prove everything just by looking at a verse. I think
mm,
everything was so certain and all of a sudden it
yeah,
wasn't anymore, Britt. And it was
yeah,
that crisis of,
mm,
I don't think I have a foundation. I'm free. I'm free
yeah.
falling. I'm
'Cause that
scared.
was, like, the guidebook, like, you show up
Yes.
on Earth, and it's like, I don't know what the fuck is going on, and it's
Yeah.
like, "Oh, here's a book." It's like
Yeah.
the flight instructions, and you're like,
Yeah.
"Fantastic," and then when
Great.
that falls apart, yeah, that's very difficult. I find that more in my Christian clients,
Mhm.
than my Mormon clients because Mormonism, the Bible is, flexible,
It's
and so it's
supplemental
not,
or
yeah,
yeah.
it's not the anchor. Usually, like, there's other anchors in different religions, and so it really doesn't matter, like, what the anchor was. You don't have to understand every religion to understand
Mhm.
deconstruction. The process is whatever your religious anchor was, you lost it and you're floating in the abyss. Like that's what deconstruction is at its root.
How did you find your grounding again?
Yeah. So for me, I was such a headspace person and a truth seeker and had studied theology and history and philosophy. I kept trying and like we talked about before with evangelism brain and atheism,
Mhm.
I was still operating with religious brain, which
Mm.
was if I could just find the truth, going back to that little 15-year-old girl, if I could just find the truth, I could figure out how to pattern my life so that I could figure out what the hell to do, right? And I tried a few times and I adopted the god of Tom Ord among other gods for a time and could never really make them stick for me. And I had a history teacher who's a mystic, he's a Sufi mystic, who really helped me see that what I was doing was almost like a trauma response. Like you're still
Mhm.
15 looking for the truth and you keep building these structures of truth, they keep collapsing on you. like maybe we need to try a different way here, because that's the
Mm.
religious brain looking for truth
Yes.
first. And so it was really intuitive at first, and then I found some resources and philosophies that helped. But what really helped is this concept. He was pointing me to, what if there's a different way to find truth or anchors that's not out here and not built on truth claims, but built on experience? Because this is what mystics are. There's a
Right.
mystic strand in every religion, and the focus of mystics is, I don't care what you call God, I don't care what you're using as scripture, I don't care, like the truth claims, I'm not going to get into that, and the manuals and the theological battles. I just want you to experience what people have called God, and I don't care
Right.
what you call it, right? That's the mystic. That's the mystic. And so this mystic teacher that I had, um, he was talking about how, what if we find a different way to build that's not built just on truth claims, but from experience up, from the ground up. And so I started for the first time actually kind of getting out of my head and into my body, which was a completely foreign object to me at the
Right.
time.
Yeah.
um Very disconnected to my body, both from religion and patriarchy, but also also personality wise,
Yeah.
just
Yeah.
as more highly analytical. And I realized that my body had things that it felt were true, that mattered to my body. And the first anchor that I found was when my son, would get off the bus. He's my oldest, and he would look for me. And then when your child's looking for you, and then they see you, and then they light up and they run to you and they give you a
Mm.
hug, and it's just the most precious thing, right? It's just so precious. And rationally, I had no reason for this to be meaningful, because in a million year span, nothing is meaningful. And in 3 generations, anything that I do will be forgotten. And, maybe we are just, monkeys that have better tools. And so rationally, I had no way to make sense of this. But in my body, experientially, my body was screaming, I don't fucking care that the
Yeah.
universe doesn't care about this child. I care about this child. I care about this
Mm.
child. I do. And so I started to listen more to my body about what was inherently meaningful for me. And that first anchor was, I really care about this child. I love this child, and this child loves me. And it feels meaningful, even if I don't have rational reasons for why that matters in a billion years, right?
Right.
And so at first it was intuitive for me. And then what that is really is philosophical existentialism, where
Yeah.
you're building life not because of any grand truths or meaning. You're building life from the point of view of existence. And there was this thought that really saved me, that if life is just building sandcastles because nothing lasts, then from one point of view, it's meaningless to try to build sandcastles. The waves will always come. But
Yeah.
when you look at children, they don't care. They're in the experience of it.
They're in that moment.
Their value is, I'm on the beach with my brother and my mom, and we're building a sandcastle just to see what happens, right?
Mm.
And so then it begged the question, what are the sandcastles that are worth building? Not because they last, not because the universe cares, not because of truth claims, but for the experience itself. And I knew that the life that I was living, which was this, like, I'm in a Mormon marriage, I'm in Boise, Idaho, I have Mormon friends that I have to mask around. I realized these aren't the sandcastles. This isn't it. This isn't the life that these aren't the sandcastles that I want to build for experience. And I started to take risks into authenticity, into
Mm.
what would that life look like for me. I'm already suffering. What am I holding on to? I'm already suicidal. I may as well try. What is the world going to do to me that I wasn't already almost willing to do to myself, right?
Wow.
And you take that courage and you build a life that's meaningful at the level of experience. And within about a year, it took me about a year, I went from waking up and wanting to die to waking up and really excited to experience that day. Even though I
Mm.
die, even though I don't know that there's an afterlife, even though I don't know what the hell is going on with reality, I got to the point where I could say, I'm really glad I got to experience existence, and I'm really
Mm.
enjoying the experience of my life and the projects that I've chosen. They're inherently meaningful to me. I can't
Mm.
save all the dogs, but I can feed this one. I
Mm,
can't save all the children, but I can adopt this one. I can't, I may not have designed life this way with this much unnecessary suffering, but I can build a life that reduces suffering. And anytime I'm in the she shed, sitting with someone who's in nihilism, and they feel seen and heard, that's inherently meaningful in the moment, even though we're both going to die,
mm.
and building that kind of life was my way out. And spirituality also is a part of that. How can I build back all of the benefits of religion and spirituality and connectedness and wisdom and ritual and awe? How can I build all of that back into my life so that the experience of life is better, without having to know the truth of anything, really? Because
Wow.
I just stopped playing the truth claim game because I played that for 20 years and it failed me.
Mm.
It wasn't a stable ground for me, but building the life from experience up was the way that I got out of that.
That's beautiful, Britt, the way you just said that. It's funny because the whole time I'm like, "Oh my gosh, she's so good with, like, words and analogies." Because for me, I'm a simple girl. I don't know if
Mm,
you know this about me. I'm a simple girl. But I it in the way that I built my foundation, rebuilt it was so simple, but it sounds like yours, but you put it way more eloquently. But it I'm just following love. Love is now
mm,
my
mm,
foundation. And
mhm.
if I follow love, I can't go wrong. Everything you just said, I'm like, up,
Yeah,
love, up,
yeah,
love. She's following love, but she's built like I love the way you
yeah,
framed that. And you know what? The truth is, I do believe God is love. If there is a God, God is love. And so if I want to live my life with, the utmost, if I want to be my best, if I want to feel my best in the little time that I have here on this earth, then you can't go wrong doing that.
yeah.
So to
And
me,
in
it's like
that, yeah.
I don't know what the future holds. I don't know what happens when I'm finished with this life. None of us do. Some of us pretend like we do. Some of us
Yeah.
think we do. But to be honest, to me, it doesn't matter because I know that if I'm following love, it's going to be lovely. It's
Mm,
going to be good,
yeah.
whatever it is, even
And
if
that
it's
goes
just
back
rest
to like
forever.
people will say, well, if you don't have God, like, why don't you go around like raping and killing people and just do whatever you want and steal? And it's like, even if I knew for sure, going back to what you're saying, even
Yeah.
if I knew for sure that my life ends at death and there's no God and we're here by some like weird, chemical happenstance, whatever. Even if all of that were true, I very much enjoy at the level of experience, a
Yes.
life of love. Just going around, like, stealing things and screwing people over for material comforts and escape, I promise you that would not be enough for me to stay alive. I would
No.
be I would still like, the second like, okay, you're in a mansion, you have a yacht, you have all these things, you're just screwing over people because there's no point and there's no meaning. Okay, fine, but the second you have a moment of quiet in that mansion where the distractions go away and the drugs wear off and whatever, you are miserable.
Yeah.
You are miserable. Like, your relationships are terrible. You have no meaning. You're just trying to distract yourself every minute of every day. And so even if I was just a hedonist and I just want to say, I just want to experience life because there is no meaning, love is still the answer to that.
Absolutely.
Even
Yep.
then, the
Yep.
love between me and my children, like, one of my first anchors was in how to reorient my life is the moment that I die. When I say I love you to my children, I want it to mean something. I want that moment to mean something. And that's going to dictate how I act today. Okay, that's an anchor. I can start there. And that's very much a love anchor. And the deep vulnerable relationships that I have with my girlfriends that just give me
Mm.
life, and the relationship with my spouse and my kids and my family, and the people that I meet, where I leave this she shed knowing that I was able to ease someone's burden today. That feels amazing. That feels like my life has meaning, even just making someone's day a little bit lighter. That feels
Mhm.
fantastic. That feels way better than stealing from someone some, bullshit thing that I want in the moment. And then as soon as that dopamine hit goes away, you're back to being miserable. That's
Yeah.
actually the best way to be miserable. That's not enough to keep me alive. I'll tell you that right
Mm-mm.
now. That
For
that
anybody.
or yeah, that's suicidal city for me. So even if the most darkest things about reality are true, love
Mm.
is still the answer. Love is still
Absolutely.
very much the way that I want to live my life because it improves my experience of life.
Well, and I think that the key takeaway from that is if you are in a religion because you're afraid you're going to be rotten if you're not submitting to a God that is holding you accountable, how is that faith? Like, that's not faith. That's obedient. That's like just trying to do something it's about a heart change. And the only way to
Mm,
change your heart is to soften it and to love.
mhm,
And so for me, it's like when people say, well, if you don't believe in hell anymore, then what do you think Jesus was all about? And I'm like,
mm,
Jesus wasn't about getting us out of hell. I know we've made it into that. I
mm,
think his whole message was, hey guys, the kingdom of God is here. It's already here.
mm,
It's in
mhm,
you. And if you
mhm,
live like that, you can do even greater things than me. I mean, I really believe that. And
mhm,
so I can still take some of these things, that
mhm.
resonate in my heart. Some people are like,
Yes.
"Oh, you're cherry picking." I'm like, "No, I'm going with what resonates in my heart. I'm sorry.
Yeah.
If you don't like that, you don't
And
have to
that
do it."
that word resonate is like mystics use that all the time.
Yeah.
Like
Yeah.
you follow the resonances.
And I think I might be more mystic now. I really do.
Mm.
I don't look at the
Mhm.
Bible as a history lesson. I don't look at it as
Yeah.
literal. I don't look at it as, inerrant, the
But you still
absolute.
you there's still something in Jesus. You see
Yes,
the mystic, the homeless mystic radical who taught about loving outside your tribe, who taught about a simple life, who taught about the kingdom of heaven being within. Like those that's yeah, that's the mystic side of Jesus that's worth holding on to. Then there's
totally.
no that's the baby in the bathwater that even me and all of my criticism of Christianity, I don't throw away that part. I take that part with me.
Oh, I love that. And that's so, oh my gosh, I could talk to you forever. I wish I could just keep you all day and we'll just keep talking, but I know you have responsibilities. But before we go, I want you to just kind of tell us a little bit about I would love to hear more about your book, No Nonsense Spirituality. All the tools, no belief required. Love that. Because I think that the message of most religions is you must believe this way.
Yeah, that's the
Um,
shortcut that religions do. If you believe this, you get all these things,
mhm.
which is hard if you've been burned by religion or you can't force yourself to believe anymore. So
Yeah.
really, the book was my journey of how do I get all the benefits that you can get with religion. And to the atheists who may be listening, who says, "What are the benefits?" Like religious people still in studies will show that they have longer longevity. For example, they fared better
Mhm.
over COVID than non-religious people did. There's
Yeah.
still some benefits here that we can even see scientifically. Like this
Right.
is not just bullshit. There's scientific evidence that shows some of this. So how do I get all of that? How do I get the baby and not the bathwater?
Yeah.
And so I went back to each aspect of what religions do for us, why it's a cognitive technology, and what is happening in the brain when we experience awe, or what do rituals do. Scientifically they do four things: they increase pleasure, they decrease pain, they process emotion, they mark values. um how do we decrease depression and anxiety? Because one of the things religions do is give us, especially kids, something
Yes.
to look forward to, a regular rhythm. Super good for reducing anxiety. Non-religious Gen Zers can experience higher anxiety than the Gen Zers who are in religion. And so
Hmm.
for me, it's like I'm taking my kids out into the unknown. I have no idea how to raise children outside of this or what to do with my life outside of this. How do I rescue all of the good of religion, all of the good of my theological studies and my studies of Jesus and all the religions and all the books behind me? How do I get all the good stuff and leave the dogma behind? And so I took each aspect of religion is a chapter, and kind of go into the science behind it and how different religions have integrated that. And then at the end of the chapter, some questions, because I want this to ever be like I'm a guru, here's your 12-step plan. It's just saying, hey, this is good for you. This is good for everyone. Here's some questions to ask yourself as far as like following that resonances bit, following your own resonances, your own core values, your own experiences. What's a way that you can authentically get this tool into your life without you having to believe things, without having you to turn off your rationality or believe things that you genuinely don't believe? And then for me, that's kind of getting the best of both worlds. You get the freedom of like you and me can listen to any podcast about theology and just find it interesting.
Yeah.
It's not challenging to me. I'm not going to have an ego response. I'm not going to go into the comments and say like you're going to hell, right? It's very freedom to just like it's freeing to explore ideas, and
Yeah.
also you get all the benefits that spiritual and religious people get, and especially for raising children outside of religion. And so that
Mm,
was just my project with that, and I leave that book behind for anyone, who is in that part of their journey who wants to know, like, how can I get the benefits if you were in religion, how can I keep those benefits moving forward? Or if you've always been secular, but you feel, kind of overwhelmed with how to raise children where they're Gen Z is really struggling with anxiety, with meaninglessness, with nihilism even, with, suicidality. Like, how do we get them the tools to be able to build a life, that every other generation got? Every other generation in human history got stories and got a community to be able to
mm,
handle all of that. So Gen Z's having to deal with more. They have to see the whole world with less tools, and
mm,
they're paying the price. And so if we're deconstructing, especially like my generation, if we're deconstructing and our kids are struggling because we didn't do enough to replace some of those things that were necessary, then what was it all for, right? And that's
mm.
when that's humbling for me,
Yes.
because I can stand here all day, I'll tell you all the reasons why Mormonism is not a true religion, but if I take my kids out of Mormonism and they struggle more outside of it, it's like, what was it all, what was it all for? So that book
Mhm.
really addresses those kinds of questions
Oh, that's
in a
awesome.
never requiring you to believe anything about anything.
Right. Well, okay. I will absolutely put a link for people
Yeah.
to get the book and also a link to your podcast. But you want to talk a little bit about how they can find you online?
Yeah, so I'm just no nonsense spirituality everywhere. I'm on TikTok the most, a little bit on Instagram. I have a YouTube channel, and then my book is No Nonsense Spirituality. Yeah, so it's just no nonsense spirituality everywhere, and just trying to find tools for the good life without having to build on truth claims that I just couldn't believe anymore.
Mm, beautiful. I love it. You're amazing, Britt. I really, really appreciate you being here, sharing so openly and just with such wisdom and depth. Ugh, I could sit in
I
this forever. I love it.
This has
But
been so fun. The hour just flew
I
by. And for people who
know.
don't know, Leslie's just about to go into a 2-month, in our cohort, we're doing a 2-month deep dive into nihilism and existential crisis and existential health. And I was thinking the other day, should I have done this like in the spring? Like the days are getting darker and it's like going into winter and we're talking about like the deep struggles of meaninglessness. But then someone who was more witchy in the group was like, "No, it'll be good.
Oh, I love it.
We'll go into kind of some of these dark places, dark night of the soul, and then kind of in the spring we're going to do a lot more work in reconstruction." So
Okay, I
Leslie and
love
I are
that.
about to go to a deeper dive into this place. So
Yes.
so that we can better understand this human experience, so that we can better sit with others in this very human experience to have a dark night of the soul.
Yeah, and it's okay if
And
that's
it's
where you
okay.
are. I
Yeah.
mean, I tell you, you don't really understand light until you've been through darkness, and
Yeah.
when once you get there, you're like, "Oof,
And
okay."
when I was in it, it was like, "Oh, I'm dying." Like, I
Yes.
felt like I was dying, and now when I hear someone who's, like, very much in their dark night of the soul, I almost get excited, like, "Oh,
Right.
okay, yeah, yeah,
Oh,
we're gonna go through this,
normal.
and, like, it's super hard, and it's totally normal, and the freedom and authenticity and gifts that are on the other side of this, dark night of the soul are amazing." And
And
so
worth
for me now, like, it's not a scary place, but
oof,
when I was
hard to
in
hear in it,
it when
though.
I was in it, I thought I was dying.
Yeah,
It's called the dark night of the soul for a reason.
for a reason, yes, for sure, and you don't realize how dark until you're there, but
Yeah.
I am telling you, it's worth it, and I think that's why Britt does what she does, it's why I do what I do, it's why you find people who are willing to walk through this darkness with you
Yeah.
and, not tell you where to go,
Yeah.
but, like, help you navigate, like,
Yeah, it's I
walk
just
with
show
you.
up like a
Yeah,
hiker with a bunch of tools. I have no idea, like, where your life path is going. I'm just gonna, like, be there as a second set of eyes and just
right.
kinda walk with you.
Mm,
And and you do this too.
mhm,
And yeah, it just to me, there's such benefit through going through this. It feels like you're dying, but on the other side, your relationships are more vulnerable and more honest and more just like truly naked in
mhm,
any way that you can be naked. And the freedom and the authenticity and how unique my life is, like that's the thing with Mormonism. Like, yes, it can give you all of those things, but it wasn't. unique to me. It was everybody's path, right? Like my life, no one could really live my life like me. And that's a good sign. That means that I made it and it's for me.
Mm,
From following those resonances, right?
yeah.
And so there's such good things where now the dark night of the soul, like I'm excited when I work with a client who's in their dark night of the soul, but if it doesn't feel exciting, like we know
Well,
it
well,
feels like dying.
you can't have resurrection without death,
Yeah.
and so it
Yeah.
is kind of like
And
that.
isn't that so weird? Like we have a million stories. Every hero's journey, they go into their darkest cave, which is
Mhm.
their greatest fear. We have like the symbol of the phoenix where you burn down, you like all around us are stories and hints of people who are saying like it's going to kill you, but
Trust
like
me, you'll be okay.
there's like
Just
you
hang in
can
there.
turn the corner on this and there's good things on the other side, and yet when I was in it, I forgot all of those things that are around me of all these symbols that like, yes, you're gonna die, but there's something after this. I just thought I was dying. Like I just thought like,
It's over.
it's over and I don't want to do this anymore. This life thing, like
Mm,
get me the hell out of this thing. I don't want to do this anymore. But yeah, now it's like, oh, there were signs and stories all around me
all around you.
of how this is a very human experience.
Yeah. Well, Brit Hartley, I honor your journey. Thank you for joining us today. You are a treasure to so many who, just need to see a little beacon of hope in that dark night of the soul. So thank you for what you
It's
do.
been my pleasure, and it's just going to be a great year digging into these things deeper in our cohort, and I'm really enjoying doing that with you.
Yeah, me too. Thank you so much.